G8 leaders say they want debt-stricken Greece to remain in the Eurozone. In their summit communique, G8 leaders have also committed themselves to promoting growth in Europe alongside fiscal responsibility. Well, for the latest, let's now cross to Craig McMurtrie, who is in Chicago. And Craig, as just mentioned, despite those dire predictions for the future of the Euro, the G8 leaders are committed to keeping Greece in the Eurozone.
Yes, Andrew, that's right. They were quite careful at Camp David to make sure that was very prominent in their communique, affirming that they want Greece to remain in the Eurozone, also talking about growth. Really, it came down to the two Gs, growth and Greece. The fact that there was an emphasis on growth in the communique, something of a victory for President Obama and the new French President, Francois Hollande, because there has been this debate, this divide, particularly amongst the European leaders, over whether or not budget cuts, austerity measures, tougher ones are the way to go, or whether or not a more balanced approach is required. Though it's interesting, the communique also talks about the right measures not necessarily being the same for each member country. So clearly still leaving room for those like Prime Minister Cameron, like Chancellor Merkel, who are more keen on fiscal discipline, budget cuts, to be able to pursue that agenda.
So, Craig, you're saying this is there is a significant division there, whether to continue with austerity or back those stimulus measures. And we're seeing then the new French President, Hollande, on side with Obama and perhaps up against Angela Merkel.
Yes, absolutely. The new French president sat down with Barack Obama at the Oval Office. They had a face-to-face meeting. There's no secret that Barack Obama, that the Americans really wanted to push more of a growth agenda. Of course, President Obama has as much politically in this as anybody else. He's facing re-election this year. There are real concerns about what an economic collapse in Greece and indeed turbulence in Europe would mean for a still struggling US economy. And definitely in that respect, the Americans see President Hollande of France as an ally. Worth noting too, the other big thing out of the G8 at Camp David, Iran, really keeping on applying pressure on Tehran to sit down at the negotiating tables, to give up any ambitions to weaponize the nuclear program. Barack Obama making the point today that the G8 leaders have grave concern. They are also acknowledging that there are new tough sanctions to kick in a month's time. They're acknowledging it could represent a substantial risk to markets, but that they are committed as a group, as the G8, the leaders of the most advanced economies in the world, they are committed to keeping up with these tough sanctions to ensure that Iran does not pursue a nuclear weapons program. US negotiators are sitting down with Iranian negotiators in the next week.
Now, Craig, you're in Chicago there on the streets. Now we're waiting for Julia Gillard to arrive. Her plane was, in fact, a little late leaving Townsville. What can she expect to be discussed at that NATO summit?
This summit, we're about 2 blocks from the convention venue here in downtown Chicago, is all about Afghanistan. As you can see behind me, there is a huge security cordon going up here now. Thousands of Chicago police, supplemented by hundreds of state troopers. They are essentially sealing off this whole area. You can probably hear the helicopter noise overhead. Prime Minister Gillard arrives in the next hour or so. She isn't participating in the NATO discussions tomorrow. That's for NATO members. But the following day, she will sit down with other non-NATO leaders, and in essence it comes down to money. The US in particular is looking for, I guess, another affirmation that everybody's on board with the basic timetable, handing over combat lead next year and US troops moving out by the end of 2014. But in particular, they are looking for money, $4 billion, because that's what they think it'll cost a year to stabilise the Afghan economy as the troops pull out. Australia's already committed $100 million, and US officials are saying they're not looking for this to be necessarily a strict pledging conference, but they are clearly very, very pleased that Prime Minister Gillard has offered that amount of money.